Good morning. Hand today is going to be 5 forward hearts. In this hand, we are in the big blind. We have a limper, small blind calls, and I just check. So we're going to look at this player here. He's playing 31-5. We've got about 100 hands on him, and he raises first in early position 2 out of 21. He's limped 3 out of 21. So I think there's going to be hands that he's going to raise with, hands that he's going to limp with, and I just kind of put something like this. I started with about 24% or so and took off the top, I think 10%. That is that I think he would probably raise first in with. And then for the rest, I just have him as calling, limping. So I think this is possibly a decent limping range here, about 14%. Small blind, I only have 35 hands. So with 35 hands, I'm just going to say I'm looking at broadways, suited aces, suited kings, suited queens, offsuit aces, pocket pairs, and so forth. And I weighted some of these hands because we do have some 3-bet stats. So we've got 3-bet by position. We've got 1 out of 12, but when we look at the notes, we can see that he has 3-bet jacks plus, king 10 suited, ace king off. So, and I think I also have notes, did not raise pre-flop and hijack with queens. It did not raise flop with overpair, mostly a dry board. So I think he is capable of just being passive as well with some of these big cards and try to slow play it. So I weighted these to be like 50% that he would have raised, 50% he calls for all of like jacks, queens, kings, and ace king. And then I did a little less for aces. And I think I did that at about 25%. So 25% he would have limped and the rest he would have raised. My hand, we do have ISO range raising here. So that's the ISO raise from the blinds. This is always an optional. Since I just checked, I took all those out and it leaves all the other hands. So I've got a lot of cards in my range. So the flop comes down king 9-4. We have only invested the big blind that we are required to invest. So we have a bottom pair. I don't think this is going to be a hand that we're going to try to invest a lot of money in. I don't think it's a hand that we're going to try to fight for. I think there are better situations that arise that there's really no reason for us to try to go crazy and try to take down a pot with bottom pair. So I think it's perfectly fine just to go ahead and check here. And then the early position player limps. Now he limps pretty weakly. So the pot's 3 big blinds. I guess he could do it with a set or 2 pair, but and even with the top pair, but I kind of think they would go larger, like 1.5 to maybe 2. So I think I'm going to exclude those and just basically say I think he's probably doing this with a bunch of weak cards. Maybe weak pairs, maybe even just like ace jack, ace 10, something like ace high. Villain 3 folds, so he just completely whiffed, which is interesting. And I'm sure I went ahead and called. I think at this point, even if we have 2 pair, the board's fairly dry. I don't think we're going to be raising. I don't think Villain's like really demonstrating strength. I think if we raise to go for some value, he's just going to fold everything. So I think we're going to probably just call with our 2 pair. I think we're going to probably call, which is like everything that we have. And again, because the board's kind of dry, it's like, what could he have on here? He didn't show any aggression. So, and his small sizing suggests he missed. So I do think we're calling with like all of our pairs. Of course, there is possibility that we could always try to bluff. I think we're going to call with a gut shot, and I think any of these 2-card backdoor flushes, I think we can conceivably call here from the big blind. I think there's a lot of cards that could come that's gonna freeze him. We could bet, and I mean, as long as he doesn't have a pair, I think he's just gonna give up. And maybe that's what we do. Maybe our raising range isn't necessarily raising with 2 pair and top pair to go for value. Maybe our raise will just be pure bluff because we don't think he's being super aggressive. So maybe we're just raising these types of hands. I did call. Turns to 5. So that's that fits all of our backdoors. So any of our clubs now we can continue. Any of our gut shots, any of our hands that kind of get us closer to a straight. Ace 3, Ace 2, those are all going to be calls. 2 3s are going to be a call. 6 7, 6 8 could be calls. So I do think we check again, and then villain checks. So once villain checks, I think that really excludes all of his, sets and 2-pair type hands. And I'm kind of questioning whether he has middle pair or not, but we're going. His range is something like that. So at this point, I'm way ahead. I'm pretty confident I'm way ahead. And then the 9 of spades, it's just probably that is a terrible card. Any 9, any king is terrible because it counterfeits my 2-pair. If I bet, what do I think he's going to call with? I think if I bet he's calling with 3 of a kind, we're going to color code this. He probably calls with weaker pairs. So we have a weak pair ourselves. I don't think he calls with any of the ace high or nothing hands. So I think for the most part we're probably going to be losing if we bet if we get called. So I think it's probably better just to go ahead and check here, and villain checks behind. Now if we bet, I do think we're betting our full house. We're betting 3 of a kinds. I think we're betting top pair with a 9, and then I think if we have a 7, or our 5, 9s 5s with the king kicker. I think these are the hands we're betting 41%, and then you can balance it with like the nothing hands, the no pairs. I think these weaker pairs, I think we have some value in showdown. So we do get to showdown. I show 5-4. He shows ace queen, which I didn't have him in his range. I assumed that was in his raising range. So he just was very passive with ace queen pre-flop. So we'll take a note of it. And he was in early position, so he LFI EP2, LFI in EP2 with ace of hearts, queen of spades. He is IP 3-way. He bet 1 big blind. I guess he bet 33%, and then check. King of spades, 9 of clubs, 4 diamonds, 5 of clubs, 9 of spades. All right. So we took the note. So how do I think I played? I think I played it. I'd say probably as well as we could. We saw a flop with 5-4. Could we go crazy? Yeah, we could go crazy and start raising and betting. But again, we only had the 1 big blind from the post. Why throw in a bunch of money just to chase a really small pot? I don't really think that it's necessarily justified to do that. So here we checked villain bet on the flop, and I think his bet was indicating weakness, real weakness. So I think we're calling with a lot of our hands. And then I think depending on that turn card, it's going to dictate whether or not we continue. And I bet we would be continuing probably a good 60% on the turn. We're willing to continue. So we're going to check, and if he checks behind, then that opens up a bluff on a good card. So anything, I'd say 9 or lower, was going to be worthy of a bet. Now, with that 9 or lower, I'm assuming that the 5 is not a Broadway card. So if these 2 cards are lower than a Broadway, I think we're going to be safe to try to bet and try to pick up the pot on the river. In this hand, I flop bottom pair and then I turn 2 pair, so we were good. So hopefully you enjoy this hand. If you do, look tomorrow for another.